The 2020 NFL Draft is 4 years into their careers, and in today's video we will be going back and grading the top half of the first round. This draft took place during COVID when Roger Goodell was announcing picks from his living room, and this will be a fun trip down memory lane for some, and a not so fun trip down memory lane for others. We will be going in reverse order, and we will be starting with the Falcons selection of corner Terrell, and finishing with the Bengals selection of Joe Burrow. We all know why we're here, so let's dive right in. We are starting today's video with Falcons corner Terrell. I was a little surprised when the Falcons took Terrell with the 16th overall pick, as I thought he was a late day 1 or early day 2 player, but AJ's second season was great, and even great would be an understatement. He had an opposing passer rating of just 47.5 when targeted, which was by far the best of any of his 4 seasons in the NFL. As we know all too well, football is a team game, and AJ unfortunately suffers from his team not having a great pass rush. The Falcons have went several years now without a great pass rush, and AJ did regress in 2022, but he picked it back up in 2023. He is a very good player, but because he's not pulling down 4 or 5 interceptions a season and making big highlight plays, he doesn't get a lot of love the way other corners do. But the reality is, a lot of NFL teams wish they had a corner of Terrell's caliber on their roster. I know the Pro Bowl doesn't have the allure it once did, but he absolutely should have been a Pro Bowler in 2021, and there was a reason he was a second-team All-Pro that year. Every corner in today's era is going to get beat at times. It happens, and it's a part of the game. But AJ is a very good corner, and he will soon be getting compensated in a big way, an A- grade. Jeudy was the second receiver taken, and he was a prospect I loved in the 2020 draft. I thought Jerry's route running ability would seamlessly transition to the NFL, and there's still times where Jerry gets open and you see the flash of the player he was coming out of Alabama, but not as consistent as you'd like. Jeudy is now a Brown, and in the 4 years he played for Denver, he had 3 years with 750 yards or more receiving and only had 11 touchdowns. 11 touchdowns in 4 years as the 15th overall pick is pretty disappointing, and there was a brief period in time where the Broncos thought they had a good trio in Drew Lock, Jerry Jeudy, and Courtland Sutton. One thing that has affected Jeudy's career in a big way, and especially early on, was drops. He dropped 12 passes in 2020 on 113 targets and caught passes at an abysmal 46%. Don't get me wrong, Jerry has a place in the NFL and will for a while, but he was underwhelming for the Broncos as a first-round pick. It's hard to say he was a complete bust because he wasn't, and 3,000 yards in 4 years shows that he was capable at times, but he was underwhelming, especially with some of the other receivers in this class. A C grade. Javon Kinlaw was an interesting prospect coming out of South Carolina, and if you were wondering why the 49ers had this high of a draft pick despite this being the year after they lost to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, well, this pick was traded from the Colts so they could get DeForest Buckner. Kinlaw's comparison coming out of South Carolina, ironically, was Buckner. The thought process was, with how loaded the 49ers defensive line was, Javon could slide right in and they would get similar production from him while he was on the rookie scale contract. Defoe, of course, got paid when he went to Indy and signed a 4-year, $84 million contract, but it doesn't always work the way you intend, and in 4 years with the 49ers, Kinlaw played in 41 games and started in 28 of them. He missed a lot of time in his second and third seasons, and even when he played a full 17 games in 2023, he wasn't a great player by any means, not awful, but not great either, and there was a reason the 49ers were fine with letting him walk in free agency. Javon is now a Jet, and in 4 years with San Francisco, he had 70 total tackles, 7 tackles for a loss, 5 sacks, and was a pretty disappointing player relative to where he was drafted, an F grade. Next up is the Bucs selection of Tristan Wirfs, and between reviewing film, writing script, and editing, there's a ton of time invested in every video, but you know what does not take a lot of time? A meal from Factor. Factor makes meeting your goals easier than ever before by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. Their meals are ready to eat in just 2 minutes, which makes them very convenient, especially when you don't have time for prepping, cooking, and cleanup. They're also more than just lunch or dinner, and and in addition to the 35 different meal options you have each week, there are also 55 additional add-ons like breakfast, smoothies, and desserts. I go to the gym every day and it's a part of my routine, and so is Factor. During a busy draft season, I feel my best later on in the day, and Factor offers a ton of options to make it easy to stick to my goals. So if that sounds like something you want for your life, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code analysis50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life. 2 free wellness shots from 3 available flavors for every order while you are an active subscriber. That's Factor75 and the code is ANALYSIS50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Alright, now let's break down a big fella who probably gets the Protein Plus option from Factor, and that's Bucs tackle Tristan Wirfs. Tristan was the 4th tackle taken in the 2020 class, and everyone was a tad bit surprised that out of the top 4 tackles, Tristan was the one drafted last. And 4 years later, the Bucs are more than thankful the teams in front of them passed on Tristan, as he is a 3-time Pro Bowler and a 2-time All-Pro. Wirfs has been a great player since his rookie season back in 2020, and the Bucs drafted 2 huge players with their first 2 picks in 2020 in Wirfs and Antoine Winfield Jr., and those 2 players played significant roles during the Bucs Super Bowl run that year. Wirfs was a right tackle for the first 3 years of his career and made the transition to left tackle for the 2023 season, and you would have never known he didn't take his first NFL snap at left tackle until his 4th season based on how he played in 2023. He is only 25 years old, and there's really only 2 things I'm wondering about his future. The first, of course, is how much will he get paid when it's his time, and the other is how many Pro Bowls and All-Pros will he make by the end of his career. I'm also glad Wirfs eventually got Tom Brady's phone number for those who remember that little storyline, but this grade is pretty easy. It's an A+. Henry Ruggs was the first receiver off the board, and Ruggs was a very fun player to project at the NFL level. He ran a 4.27 40 during his pre-draft process and had a 42-inch vertical, and he was pretty much the guy you created in Madden from an athletic perspective. During Henry's season and a half with the Raiders, he totaled 50 receptions for 921 yards and 4 touchdowns before being released in November of 2021. During Ruggs' second season, he rear-ended another car at a very high rate of speed, and unfortunately this young woman and her dog passed away. May they both rest in peace. And Henry was under the influence and is currently serving a sentence at the Stewart Conservation Camp in Carson City, Nevada. From a football standpoint, I think this had one of the bigger butterfly effects, not just for the Raiders, but for the entire NFL, and I've thought about doing a video on this in the past and exploring everything that happened after this. I do think Henry would have been a 1,000-yard receiver, and him and Derek Carr would have had a few good years together, but as you can probably guess, this grade is an F. Makai Becton was a boom or bust prospect coming out of Louisville back in 2020, and his size jumped off the charts. He ranked in the 90th percentile or better in height, weight, arm length, and hand size, and even ran a very good 40 at 364 pounds as he ran a 5'1". Makai had a solid rookie year and looked like he was going to be the Jets' left tackle of the future. There was a brief period in time that the Jets legitimately thought they had a quarterback and left tackle duo for the next 5 to 7 years, maybe even decade if they were lucky, of Zach Wilson and Makai Becton. Makai unfortunately peaked in his rookie year as he only played in 1 game in 2021, then missed the entire 2022 season. Through 3 years, he had played in just 15 games, and there were a lot of questions surrounding the Jets' offensive line heading into 2023, and Makai was one of them. He started 2 games at right tackle, then played the rest of the year at left tackle, and allowed 12 sacks, which led the league along with Andre Dillard, who was released by the Titans. The Jets obviously struggled a lot in 2023, and we all know quarterback play wasn't ideal after Rodgers went down, but the left tackle position was woeful, an F grade. Jedrick Wills was the second tackle off the board, and I liked Jed a lot coming out of Alabama. He had a good rookie year, and during his rookie year, the Browns won a playoff game in Pittsburgh, and Jed's future, and the team, led by then quarterback Baker Mayfield, looked bright. But as of this point, Jed's best year was probably back in 2020, and the Browns' 2020 offensive line was a very good unit from left to right, and they were a tough out in the playoffs for a reason. The The last 3 years with Jed has been up and down, and there's times where he looks like the 21-year-old future franchise tackle we saw back in 2020, and there's other times where opposing defensive linemen take him to school. The Browns recently picked up Jedrick's 5th-year option, and at minimum, they will receive 5 years from a first-round pick, and I would be surprised if they traded him without a clear plan in place. I think Wills will be a starter for this team for 7 or 8 years, and remember, there's a lot of teams that would take Jedrick over their current left tackle. Ultimately, we went with a B- grade. CJ Henderson was a highly touted prospect coming out of Florida, and he had a very good draft process and was a huge riser in the months leading up to draft weekend and was eventually a top 10 pick. Jacksonville had 2 first-round selections that year in CJ and pass rusher Javon Kinlaw, and neither one panned out. Just a few weeks into CJ's second season, he was traded along with a 2022 5th-round pick in exchange for tight end Dan Arnold and a 2022 3rd-round pick, effectively showing the Jags were giving up on their young corner. Per PFF, during CJ's rookie year, he was credited with allowing 4 touchdowns while pulling down 1 interception and allowing a passer rating of 111.7 when targeted, which isn't exactly good. Lifetime, CJ has allowed 13 touchdowns and has pulled in just 3 interceptions and has an opposing passer rating of 113.9 when targeted, and there was a reason the Jags had the #1 overall pick in 2021 and were able to get Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, it wasn't all due to a rookie corner in 2020, but continuously missing on first-round picks. It's news anytime a team trades a former top 10 pick, and Jacksonville traded him less than a year and a half after drafting him in the top 10. CJ is now a member of the Texans, and this is an F grade. Isaiah Simmons was a prospect everyone loved coming out of Clemson. He was the ultimate chess piece defensively, and his pre-draft process was filled with hype and endless thoughts of what he could be at the NFL level. But there's a reason not every NFL player becomes a superstar and becomes a multiple-time Pro Bowler like Simmons was thought to be. He had some flashes, and whenever Simmons made big plays early on in his career, everyone was excited because almost everyone loved him as a draft prospect. But Isaiah's 5th-year option wasn't picked up in May of 2023, and he was traded to the Giants a little over 3 months later. There was some belief that the Cardinals were trimming the fat of the old regime and they didn't see Simmons as a locker room fit, and some people thought it was due to effort, or lack of. Cardinals fans were a mixed bag when this selection was made because some wanted a duo of DeAndre Hopkins and CeeDee Lamb, which would have also paired Kyler with his former college teammate, while others wanted tackle Tristan Wirfs. Simmons was an okay player for the Cardinals, but there was a reason he was traded for a 7th-round pick. I don't think it's fair to give this an F grade, and ultimately we went with a C-. Derrick Brown was a very good defensive tackle prospect from Auburn, and after a good 3rd year in 2022, he cleared the table in 2023. Unfortunately, with the lack of team success, Derrick does not get talked about enough nationally, and it's a shame because you may be surprised to find out that he broke a record in 2023, and that was for most tackles in a season by a defensive tackle. He had 103 total tackles and even had 15 quarterback hits, despite being more of a run-stopping defensive tackle than a 3-tech pass-rushing defensive tackle, but Derrick was a Pro Bowler for the first time in his career. You may look at Brown's career stats and say, why would the Panthers waste a top 7 pick on a defensive tackle who only has 8 career sacks, but Brown is the leader of the Panthers defense. As you can imagine, with how many games they lost in 2023, opposing teams ran the ball against them a lot this past year. But the Panthers defense actually finished 12th in yards per carry allowed, and that's due in large part to Derrick. Make no mistake, he will probably never be a double-digit sack guy like Chris Jones of the Chiefs, but he is without a doubt one of the best defensive tackles in football, an A grade. Justin Herbert was a very controversial selection at the time as he was a boom or bust player, and he most certainly boomed. He won the Rookie of the Year as he threw for over 4,300 yards, had 31 touchdown passes, and ran for an additional 5 scores. He would have an even better second season as he threw for 5,000 yards, threw for 38 touchdowns, and added on 3 rushing touchdowns for a 41 total touchdown season at just 23 years old. Unfortunately, 2022 did not go according to plan, as he had his top 2 receivers in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams miss significant time, and due in large part to that, Herbert's numbers suffered suffered, and he was not the player we saw in the first 2 years of his career. LA would go on to win 10 games and made the playoffs, but unfortunately Justin himself did not play good defense in the second half of the Jags playoff game, and they blew a 27-point lead. 2023 was a nightmare for the Chargers, and Herbert's season ended prematurely, and the coaching staff was fired. Justin has been one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL since entering the league, and has thrown for over 17,000 yards and 114 touchdown passes since being drafted number 6 overall. Herbert was rewarded with a $262.5 million contract in July of 2023, and it's pretty clear. The Chargers have their guy, and they hit a slam dunk on this pick, or a home run if you will, an A+ grade. Tua Tagovailoa is up, and there will be some feathers ruffled with this grade. Tua played in 10 games as a rookie and 13 games in each of his second and third seasons. 2023 was the first year in which Tua played every game, and he would go on to lead the NFL in passing yards. He also threw for 29 touchdowns, and the greatest show on Surf went on to win 11 games. There are some people that don't think Tua is all that good, and they point to an offensive mastermind in Mike McDaniel as his head coach, and of course, having Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to throw the football to. They also point to the Dolphins' record against teams with winning records, and there is no better example of that than the final 3 games of the Dolphins' 2023 season, postseason included. They got blown out by Baltimore, they lost to the Bills with the division of the line in their stadium, and they got embarrassed by the Chiefs in the playoffs. No matter who you ask, everyone has an opinion on Tua. Personally, I think he is a solid quarterback, but I think it would be a mistake if Miami gave him a $55+ million per year contract. He's also far from a draft bust. This is a very difficult pick to grade, and this was the most difficult pick to grade from this class, and ultimately we went with a B+. Andrew Thomas was the first tackle off the board, and there were 4 tackles taken in the top 13 picks, and one of the big questions entering the 2020 draft was which tackle was going to be the first off the board. If you know anything about Andrew Thomas, then you know he had a tough rookie year, and tough would be an understatement. PFF credited him with allowing 10 sacks as a rookie, and the good news for Thomas and the Giants is he's been pretty good since. The Giants obviously found their left tackle of the future in Andrew Thomas, but they currently have a lot of questions surrounding right tackle Evan Neal. We bring this up because Giants fans are hoping Evan has the same career trajectory Andrew had, where he vastly improves as his career goes on. Andrew was a 21-year-old rookie, and I don't think it should have been too big of a surprise that a 21-year-old struggled in his first NFL season against 28 or 29-year-old grown men that have been doing this for nearly a decade. He had some seasoning and some growing pains, but it's hard not imagining Andrew Thomas being their left tackle for 10 years. If you want to give this an A+, I wouldn't push back on it, but we try and reserve those grades for the elite of elite picks. This is an A grade. Corner Jeff Okudah is up, and this is a selection Lions fans would like to forget. Okudah was drafted number 3 overall, and he was expected to be a premier shutdown corner that would go to multiple Pro Bowls and have a few All-Pros. He suffered a hamstring injury in training camp in his rookie year and only played in 9 games. 2021 was going to be a true test, and Lions fans were anxious to see their top 3 pick play, and in the only game Okudah played all year, which was week 1 against the 49ers, he allowed a 79-yard touchdown before tearing his Achilles in the first game of the year. Through 2 years, he played in just 10 games, and in 2022, while he wasn't awful, he certainly wasn't great, and I think he was a lot closer to bad than he was good. There was a reason the Falcons were able to trade for Okudah in April of 2023 for just a 5th-round pick. Okudah finished out his rookie contract in Atlanta and is now a member of the Texans. He played a little over 1,300 snaps for the Lions and played in just 25 games with Detroit, despite being the number 3 overall pick. The previous Lions regime was bad, and this was not a good selection. He finished his career in Detroit with 124 total tackles, along with 2 interceptions, and this is an F grade. Chase Young was the 2nd overall pick in 2020, and this is a tough pick to grade for a few reasons. Chase had a great start to his career as he won the Defensive Rookie of the Year, was named a Pro Bowler, and looked to be a future star. He was a highly touted prospect coming out of Ohio State, and there's certainly been flashes of that player during his time in the NFL. But little did we know his rookie year with Washington would be his peak with the football team and Commanders. In 2021, he had a sophomore slump in the 9 games he played before suffering a major knee injury in which he not only tore his ACL, but also tore his patellar tendon. He played in 3 games in 2022, and 2023 was going to be a real test to see if Chase could be the player he was touted as a few years prior. He had 5 sacks in 7 games with Washington before being traded to the 49ers, and after he finished the 2023 season with the Niners, he signed with the Saints in the 24 offseason. During Chase's career with Washington, he played in 34 games, had 14 sacks, and had 75 total tackles. He didn't exactly net multiple first-round picks in the trade with the Niners, and this grade was tough to settle on because, remember, he did win the Rookie of the Year. He wasn't a complete non-factor, and we give this draft grade a hard D. Joe Burrow was drafted number 1 overall after a legendary 2019 season at LSU. During his final season with the Tigers, he threw for over 5,600 yards and 60 touchdowns as he was on his way to a Heisman Trophy and a national championship victory. Joe was raised in Ohio, and the Bengals made him the number 1 overall pick in April of 2020. Burrow's rookie year wasn't great, as since he was just 2-7-1 with him as their starter, and as we know, Joe eventually went down with a torn ACL, prematurely ending his rookie year. But 2021 was the start to where the Bengals are now, and it was Burrow's breakout year. He would go on to throw for 4,600 yards and 34 touchdowns as the Bengals made a Super Bowl appearance, in which they lost to the Rams with a score of 23-20. They would go to the AFC Championship game in 2022, and unfortunately another injury ended Joe's 2023 season in Week 11 against the Ravens. The Bengals are not the team they are now without Joe Burrow. He helped change not just the way an organization believes, but the way a city believes. With Burrow being just 27 years old, it's hard to imagine him not winning at least 1 Super Bowl during his career. He is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but because they lost the Super Bowl, this is an A grade. And relax guys, this is an easy A+. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 29% of people watching are subscribed, and it helps the channel tremendously. Thank you to Factor for sponsoring today's video, and until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.